Finally, a video on the Rainy75. Some might say this is probably one of the best budget keyboards this year. And if you somehow do not know what a Rainy75 is, let me introduce it to you. It first launched on Kickstarter, and with all the specs and features alongside the price, it grew in popularity really fast. Their group buy actually had thousands of orders, and I didn't join the group buy, I actually just got mine in stock on Taobao. I'm not sure if everyone has received it yet, but mine I got from in stock from Taobao. I bought the keyboard with my own money. After tinkering around the keyboard for a few days, I completely understand the hype and can actually agree with everyone that this is probably the most value you can get and probably the best budget keyboard you would get in 2024. So let's start with the build quality. Fully made from aluminum with a compact 75% layout with the steel glass weight of the keyboard, it comes up at about 4 pounds, which is pretty hefty actually. Very minimal logo design represents the name of the keyboard really well, both on the front and the back of the keyboard. With triple mode connection, wired, 2.4 GHz and Bluetooth, it's basically catered to everyone, be it gaming or for work. And in my opinion, what separates this keyboard from every other keyboard is how it sounds. What we have installed to achieve this sound, the double shot PBT keycaps and HMX violet switches. It's actually my first time trying out HMX switches, and this violet switch really impressed me, to be honest. A 5-pin linear switch and sounds really amazing without any lubing whatsoever. Although the basis of this keyboard is gasket mounted with foam, how it sounds just seems a little more unique compared to other budget keyboards that we have seen. For those of you who usually watch my videos, you guys know I usually like to test the keyboards to see how different they can sound based on the foam configuration and what switches we use. So let's do that. Usually, I like to start with a lighter sound, a clacky build, which is also when I found the first and the one and only flaw that I didn't really like about this keyboard. So the keyboard has a screwless design, which means that they don't have any screws at the back but instead have them all at the front. Usually keyboards nowadays use hex screws, but the Rainy75 actually uses Phillips screws, which is honestly fine, like it is completely fine, but I do think that the quality of these screws aren't the best. They are pretty bad. If by any chance, like in my situation, I had a certain screw that was pre-assembled a little too tight, and while I was using a proper screwdriver with the proper screwdriver heads, I had a tough time trying to remove that screw, and I had to avoid stripping the screw, like because of how bad the quality of the screw is and how tight it was pre-assembled. I had a really tough time opening up the keyboard for the first time. So when you first receive your board, or for those of you who play around with your board a lot, I would suggest to take care of the screws and just take note if you are stripping the screw or not. But let's move on to our PCB. They did an amazing job on the PCB. It is a south-facing 5-pin hot swappable PCB, support for screw-in stabilizers, and supports VIA. It has quite the number of flex cards alongside the PC plate, which also has flex cards. The stabilizers though, this is just typical plate mounted stabilizers, but they sound absolutely amazing. It's actually scary how good these stabilizers sound, like right out of the box. As for the foam, we have the standard plate, PE and PCB foam. These HMX violet switches already sound clacky and light, so without all the foam installed, this should push it even clackier or even lighter. And the one thing that really surprised me is how well the PCB sits in this keyboard without any foam installed. The more recent budget boards which I have tested, without any foam installed, the PCB doesn't sit really well or doesn't sit really right. It just feels a little off. I think having a budget keyboard that is able to handle a foamless build is really important, which I think is what separates the Rainy75 apart from the rest as well. As for the deeper and talkier build, I experimented with a bunch of switches, but I would say the main personality and sound profile of this keyboard is definitely like a more balanced but leaning towards the lighter side. So if you're trying to achieve a deeper sound profile with the keyboard, I would say the Gazoo Boba U40s did the best. And to be honest, I think that the board's unique point is how it sounds. The light, soothing tone of how the board sounds right out of the box, I feel like is what separates this keyboard from the rest. And for those of you who find custom keyboards like really plain, like why would you want to use like just white keycaps, right? Just throw on a different keycap set, give it some personality, and there you have it, your first custom keyboard. Hopefully those of you who bought the keyboard have received them by now and is playing with it and is having fun. On another note, Aries Studio might be carrying some in-stock Rainy75s. This is mainly for the US audience because I know how tough it is to get like budget boards in the US. So we are currently talking to the Rainy75 people, and hopefully we can get our hands on a bunch of Rainy75, have them in the US in stock, and you guys can get them. And if we do that, I would be honored to carry the Rainy75 because I think this keyboard is really probably one of the best budget keyboards so far.